These secrets of English speaking are never taught, but they must be learnt to avoid huge mistakes. When we think of English speaking skills, we often think of pronunciation, stress, rhythm, accent, connected speech, but there's one missing here, and this one is as important to speaking as grammar is to writing. So what is it? Let me introduce with an example. Imagine you are buying a car from one of these two people. Who would you buy from? Listen to person A.
The car has got really good brakes.
And now person B.
The car has got really good brakes.
So who would you buy from? You're very likely to have said person B. Why is that? Well, speaker B communicates more certainty about the quality of the car. But how? It's because they used better intonation. And intonation is the word that fills the gap on our English speaking skills chart. Now, hold on. You might say, Rupert, isn't intonation just about going up and down in sentences and questions? I know all about that. It's much more than that. It's all these things here. And native speakers follow specific intonation rules for all of these. I go into detail on all of these topics in my English speaking and pronunciation course, but for this video, I'm going to teach you three main principles that guide all of the other features here. And those are direction of tone, variation in tone, and the size of variation. Let's begin with direction of tone. And let's go back to the conversation that we heard earlier. Listen to person A again.
The car has got really good brakes.
Did you notice that they rose in tone at the end of the statement? What they said went up at the end in tone. We normally do this with questions, and that has a big impact on how we perceive what this person said, because they used it in a statement. Statements are not supposed to be questions, but when you go up at the end of a statement, you turn it into a question. And the consequence is that this shows doubt. Person A is showing doubt in their own idea. By going up at the end, they turn it into a question. And we only ask questions when we don't know the answer. So the effect of going up at the end of a statement is, I'm not sure about this. I don't know the answer about this. I'm saying this, but I doubt it. And that's probably why we wouldn't have trusted him to sell us the car. Let's compare to person B.
The car has got really good brakes.
Did you notice this time there was a fall in tone at the end of the statement? And now statements are not like questions. Statements are supposed to be answers. They're supposed to give us facts. And therefore, when you fall in tone at the end, you show certainty. Now, what are the implications of this difference between going up at the end of a statement and going down? Well, let's look here. Firstly, falling tone shows certainty. You're saying something as if it is a fact. Therefore, you believe what you're saying is correct. And this also means that you could use a falling tone to take authority in a situation. If you want to take charge of something or say, I know best, a fall in tone achieves that, because when you fall in tone, you're saying, this is the final answer, there's nothing more to add. And it can indicate the closure of a conversation. When you fall in tone, it shows that the conversation is complete. Your statement is complete. It's indicating there's nothing more to say. So it says, this is the end of the conversation. It's difficult to carry on a conversation after someone has fallen in tone at the end of what they say. Compare this with the rising tone. With the rising tone, it indicates a lack of certainty in what you're saying because you're turning it into a question. And that can show that you're not sure of yourself to your listener. So when you're speaking, if you want someone to have confidence in you, avoid a rising tone at the end of your statements, even though it's quite popular in some contexts nowadays. It also means you're avoiding taking authority, because if you turn what you say into a question, it means you don't have the answer, someone else does. It's implying, please give me the answer. Please take control of the situation. And it keeps a conversation going. When you go up at the end, turning it into a question-like statement. Now, questions always need answers. When you ask a question, it's very awkward if no one then answers it. You're always expecting someone to say more. So if you're just wanting to keep a conversation going, you could go up at the end as an indication you want the other person to say something too, or that you're going to carry on. And that's one reason why people often go up at the end of statements nowadays. They're showing they want to keep the conversation going. Be aware that sometimes the change in tone only affects the final word. Compare these. The car has amazing brakes. The car has amazing brakes. Notice the first example, brakes, has a falling tone even though we go up at the start of the word brakes. We go up at the start of the word brakes, but the tone falls before we finish the word brakes. Brakes. And this communicates the same falling tone certainty. But with brakes, we start low and then rise before we finish the word brakes. Brakes. Now let's look at variation of tone. And for this, let's listen to two people who've been to a party. First of all, person A.
Didn't we have a great time last night?
Now, did you notice that she went up and down and went up and down again many times with her tone? When you do this, it shows enthusiasm for what you're saying. Compare with person B.
I was bored and I wanted to stay in bed.
Now, person B did not go up and down with their tone. The tone stayed level, or we can call this flat tone. This communicates the opposite. This shows a lack of enthusiasm for what he was saying. And this has the following consequences. With variation of tone, when you fall and rise many times with what you say, this communicates enthusiasm about what you're talking about. Think about if you were giving a presentation on a topic. You want to show enthusiasm. Or if you're trying to sell a product for business reasons to 100 people in a room. If you go up and down, you show enthusiasm about the product. It's really important that you are enthusiastic so that they will be too. It shows that you want to engage. If you go up and down many times, it shows this is something worth talking about. And you're communicating to the other person that this is something worth talking about. Perhaps you could join in too. And it tells us your topic is interesting. Going up and down is a sign of interest in English speaking. And that's really important because you want to appear that you are interested in what you say yourself. Compare that with a flat tone. This communicates apathy, as if you're not enthusiastic about it at all. And imagine the consequences of this if you're trying to sell a product to 100 people. If you're not that enthusiastic about your product, then they probably won't be either. It shows you don't want to engage. Now, there can be a positive to this too, because if a conversation is going on and actually you don't want to get involved in the conversation, then a flat tone kind of puts the other person off. It subtly tells them, I'm not really enthusiastic about this. I don't want to engage. Please don't engage with me. You could use that sometimes. It may be effective in some situations. In other situations, it may backfire. And it tells us your topic is not interesting. Again, you want to think about Do I want to communicate that this is interesting? Do I want to communicate that this is not interesting? This is very much a cultural issue with languages that do not have English as their native tongue. You may come from another country where these things also happen and are obvious. But there are lots of countries around the world, lots of languages around the world, where these rules do not apply. And you need to think to yourself, how does my first language compare with English? You need to check that showing enthusiasm, inviting people to engage, or showing that you're interested in something matches up. Because if you don't match up with how English speakers do that, you risk being misunderstood, even though all of your grammar and vocabulary is correct. So it's a very important lesson to learn. Finally, size of variation. Let's listen to two people who are responding after listening to this person reading a book. Look how the person reading the book has made all the children cry. Let's listen to A first.
The story was terribly sad.
Did you notice that their tone went very high on one of the words? That's because this person had an emotional response to what they heard. It was a very sad story and it affected them emotionally. How do we communicate that when we're speaking? By going very high on certain words as we speak. Now listen to person B.
The story was a bit sad.
Person B did not go high with their tone at all, and this shows lower emotional response to what they heard. So high rising tone, that's where you go very high and then fall again, can do the following. It shows there was an emotional impact on the speaker, an emotional impact on you if you are saying something. So if you want to communicate that you have been moved by something or that you felt something strongly, a high rising tone will help do that. And this could be really effective if you're listening to someone telling a story where they expect you to give an emotional response. In your response to their story, it's useful to go high with your tone sometimes because that shows that it mattered to you. That shows that you felt something. Also, you can use a high rising tone to create an emotional response in the person you're speaking to. If you want them to feel something deeply about what you say, try this. Go very high with certain words, perhaps the most important words or the descriptive words in what you're saying. An absence of high rising tone, though, shows a lower emotional impact. You're not affected so much emotionally by what you heard. And also it means there's no effort to create an emotional response from yourself. You don't want the person listening to feel something. And again, check to see what you do in your own language, because it's really important to know how to handle emotions in your language, or again, you could get misunderstood. Either you could be seen as being too emotional or not emotional enough. So it's a lesson well worth learning. All of these features and many more are covered in detail in my course, Advanced English Speaking and Pronunciation. There's a link in the description below this video if you're interested in finding out more.